Welcome to Session 3 of Working with Faithful James. In this session, we will explore how James challenges us to reflect on the way we use our words and how that impacts our personal and other relationships, our church, our community, and even our nation and world. We will cover the power of speech, the danger of words, the hypocrisy of speech, and the wisdom of God in speech. But before we begin, we have to ask ourselves, is it possible that a single word of kindness spoken today could ripple across time and space, influencing people and events in ways we may never see? Or is it possible that a harsh word, even said in private, could set off a chain of consequences that might eventually shape the direction of a community or even a nation? Christian teachers say yes. Since God spoke all worlds into being in a single word, we, who are made in His image and a little less than divine, as the Scripture boldly declares, also have within us the power to create or destroy with our words. Let's now take a closer look at James 3. Although James begins by addressing teachers, the message quickly broadens to include all of us. The words we speak, whether in public or private, shape our relationships, influence our witness, and ultimately reflect the state of our hearts. In verse 1, James begins with a direct warning to teachers. Those who guide others with their words will be judged more strictly. However, he quickly moves to a universal truth in verse 2. We all stumble in many ways, particularly when it comes to our speech. This is not just for leaders, it is for all of us. Our ability to control what we say is a measure of our self-discipline. James tells us that if anyone can manage their tongue, they can control their entire body. In other words, speech is central to our character and the control of our desires. This echoes the teachings of Jesus in Matthew 12:36-37, where he warns that, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. Just as James warns of stricter judgment for teachers, Jesus reminds us all that our words hold weight in God's eyes. They reveal the state of our hearts and will one day be measured. The connection here is clear. Whether in casual conversation or teaching, words have spiritual significance. To illustrate this, James uses vivid metaphors in verses 3-4. He compares the tongue to a bit in a horse's mouth and a rudder on a ship, small tools that steer something much larger. A single word, though seemingly insignificant, can direct the course of a conversation, our personal and other relationships, our church, our community, and even our nation and world. But James does not stop there. He warns us of the tongue's dangerous potential in verse 5, describing it as a fire, capable of setting the course of life ablaze. A careless word spoken in anger or malice can spread destruction like wildfire. Think of how quickly gossip, lies, or slander can unravel trust and sow division. We have seen this in our own lives and in our church, how small words can lead to deep fractures. James goes further in verse 8, saying that the tongue is full of deadly poison, untamable by human strength. We may tame wild animals, but controlling our speech is a constant struggle. This ties back to Proverbs 18:21, which reminds us that death and life are in the power of the tongue. Both James and Proverbs call us to reckon with this truth. Our words can bring healing or harm, and once spoken, they cannot be taken back. Then comes the heart of the problem in verses 9-12. James calls out the hypocrisy in our lives, how we bless God with our mouths but curse those made in God's image. This resonates with Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, particularly in Matthew 5:21-22, where he warns against the sin of anger expressed through speech. When we speak against others, we are, in a way, condemning them, which is incompatible with the praise we offer to God. James presses this further with the metaphor of a spring that cannot produce both fresh and salt water. Just as a tree cannot bear two types of fruit, our speech must reflect the unity of our faith. If we claim to follow Christ, our words should mirror his teachings, kindness, honesty, and building others up rather than tearing them down. The second half of the chapter turns to wisdom, but James is still talking about the impact of our words. In verses 13-16, he contrasts two kinds of wisdom. On one side is wisdom driven by selfish ambition and bitter envy, which leads to disorder. This reflects the way speech can stir up conflict, Words rooted in pride and personal gain, rather than the well-being of others. We see this echoed in Proverbs 15:1, where a harsh word stirs up anger. This kind of speech destroys relationships and undermines the health of the church. In contrast, James lifts up true wisdom in verses 17 to 18, describing it as pure, peaceable, gentle, and full of mercy. Here we see the kind of speech that reflects God's call for us. These are words that heal rather than harm, that create unity rather than division. True wisdom is shown in speech that brings peace and encourages righteousness. James tells us that a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. This directly connects to Matthew 5:9, where Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." For James, the measure of true wisdom is not in what we know, but in how we speak and the peace our words bring. For the church, this has enormous implications. The way we speak to one another, the words we use in our homes, and the things we say about others matter deeply. They shape the kind of community we build. If our words reflect envy, bitterness, or anger, we contribute to disorder and division. But if our words are marked by mercy, gentleness, and peace, we nurture a harvest of righteousness. In the end, James 3 challenges us to see our words as a reflection of our faith. Speech is not just a matter of communication, it is a powerful tool for good or evil. Our tongues can bless or curse, heal or destroy. This echoes Deuteronomy 30:19, where Moses sets before Israel the choice between life and death, urging them to choose life. Our words offer a similar choice. Will we choose to speak life or death?